Dr. Karp, and I'm going to ask this of both you and Dr. Cannon and Mr. Siegel. You mentioned our committee staff and the work they were doing, and of course oversight is important. And it has come to the committee's recent attention that there have been allegations of prospective organ donors, patients, waking up on the way to the operating room where their organs are expected to be removed, and yet they're still not brain dead or still alive. Can you expand on that? Can you tell me, we'll start with you, Dr. Karp, but have you had an experience where this information was brought to your attention? And I ask the three of you because each of you mentioned it in one form or another, either in your opening statement or in your written testimony.
I'm not aware of this particular case.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm not aware of this particular case. Of course, it's unbelievable to hear that, but it does happen not infrequently that I, as a transplant surgeon, I also do donor operations, and so I go to a donor hospital, and it's not infrequent that something comes up around the donor and whether or not the donor is dead. And the problem is that we've got 40 years where there has been no oversight at all of the OPOs, and so what that has led to is poor education, poor standard of practice, poorly trained people. And so in a situation like that, you need to know what to do, and people don't know what to do in that situation. Unfortunately, they haven't been trained properly, and those types of problems could lead to something that you have described.
All right. Dr. Cannon.
I've experienced this myself, unfortunately, as a donor surgeon. We went on a procurement. Donor had been declared brain dead. We were actually in the midst of the operation when the anesthetist at the head of the table said they thought the patient breathed, which would essentially negate the declaration of brain death. And what Dr. Karp said, no one really knew what to do. The staff on the ground called their administrator, whose recommendation was, oh, I think this is just a brainstem reflex. We recommend you proceed, which of course would have been murder if we had done so. So yes, we closed the patient, we got out of Dodge, and we wanted nothing to do with it. So these things happen, I think.
Did the patient survive?
The patient was ultimately declared later, and they called us 2 days later, and of course we wanted nothing to do with that because we couldn't trust the process. Every transplant surgeon's probably got a story of themselves or a colleague who's had something like this.
And I assume that did not happen in the state of Kentucky?
Did not, no, sir.
Thanks. Mr. Siegel?
Yes, sir. I receive allegations like this with fairly alarming regularity. As I testified in my opening statements, when I receive these, I'm not an oversight body. I don't investigate these fully myself, but I connect them with appropriate bodies, including this committee. And I sincerely hope if your committee has found these allegations credible, that there'll be opportunities to refer some of these cases to law enforcement. And certainly I would appreciate the opportunity to work with this committee on solutions to ensure that the system is safe for patients. What I will say, which I think is the biggest statement on the safety of the system, is I know many organ procurement organization coordinators who are no longer registered organ donors themselves because of what they have seen out in the field.
And I've referenced a minute ago the state of Kentucky. It's my understanding that perhaps you've had conversations with the Attorney General of the state of Kentucky about a situation there involving somebody who was declared brain dead and turned out they were not. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
And there's documentation, the medical documentation, that they were found to be brain dead, but then they apparently woke up. And can you tell us a little bit more about what you've heard on that? I understand you didn't do the full investigation, but you're working with the state of Kentucky, the Commonwealth of Kentucky on that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I spoke to the Kentucky Attorney General yesterday, who sprung into action and pulled a whole team together on this. And I understand that they're diving deeper into this specific allegation and are even monitoring this hearing today.
All right, I appreciate that. Also heard that there might be a story where somebody actually mouthed the words, "help me," before somebody realized that they weren't a potential donor. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is an allegation I heard recently. I understand that whistleblower has been in touch with your committee. What was relayed to me was that, yes, he was instructed to recover organs from someone who was mouthing the words, "help me," decided not to proceed, and the person ended up surviving.
And you're not stating that as a matter of fact. You're stating it as an allegation that's been brought to you, that you brought to our attention. Is that correct?
Sir, that's correct.
That's what I understood. I've also heard allegations that in some cases there may be some medical personnel who don't put down the full story on the paperwork so that it appears to be a classic heart attack, where it might actually be an opioid overdose. Is that accurate?
I've heard that allegation as well, yes.
All right, and I'm out of time. I'm gonna have a lot of questions, what we call questions for the record, because I originally, before I found out about these very serious and scary allegations, was gonna work on the fact that it appears to me that perhaps the OPTN has ignored new technologies, as I mentioned in my opening, that could extend the life of an organ, and they, up to this point, have ignored it, and the guy in my district has been working on this for a decade, trying to get their attention. I now yield back and recognize Ms. Kester for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr.